I sat there frozen, my phone buzzing against the armrest as the words burned across the screen. This useless old woman must be sent to a nursing home. My chest tightened, my fingers trembling, but the name beneath the message was clear. Rachel Turner, my own daughter-in-law. Not spam, not a mistake. A knife slipped straight into my hands. After raising her husband, after paying their bills, after holding this family together for decades, I was nothing more than useless. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Gloria Bennett's phone buzzed against the armrest of her recliner, a sharp vibration cutting through the gentle hum of the evening news. She adjusted her glasses, expecting a reminder from the pharmacy or perhaps a photo from her grandson. Instead, a single line burned across the screen, stark and merciless. This useless old woman must be sent to a nursing home. Her chest tightened. The words hung there like a knife suspended above her heart. For a moment she thought it must be spam, some mistake from a stranger's number. But the sender's name was plain as day, Rachel Turner, her daughter-in-law. Gloria's fingers trembled, but her face remained still. She reread the message, every syllable sinking deeper until clarity struck like a cold slap. Rachel hadn't meant it for her. The message was misfired, a careless slip in some private conversation. Gloria wasn't supposed to see it, but she had. The house around her seemed too quiet, the muted glow of the lamp casting long, sharp shadows. Slowly, she set the phone down on the side table, as though putting away a live grenade. The sound of a car door shutting outside startled her. A minute later, Ethan stepped through the front door, loosening his tie, Rachel right behind him with her polished smile. Gloria waited, silent, until Ethan bent to kiss her cheek. "Ethan," she said, voice level but edged with steel, "your wife sent me something I think you should both see." She held up the phone. Ethan froze mid-step. Rachel blinked once, then quickly adjusted her expression into something neutral, almost bored. Ethan reached for the phone like a guilty child caught red-handed. He read the text, color draining from his face. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, searching for words that wouldn't come. "Mom, he stammered, his voice breaking into fragments. Rachel crossed her arms. "Oh, for heaven's sake." Her tone was flat, dismissive, as though Gloria had overreacted to a trivial slight. "If the shoe fits?" Ethan shot her a look of panic, but Rachel only shrugged, unapologetic. The words landed with a fresh sting, but Gloria didn't flinch. She had cared for the dying in hushed hospice rooms. She had steadied families in the rawest of grief. A cruel remark from a polished woman was not going to shatter her. Noah appeared in the doorway from the kitchen, earbuds dangling. He glanced at his grandmother, then the phone still glowing in Ethan's hand. He read the message once, eyes widening with disbelief. "Are you serious right now?" he said, voice low, disgusted. Without waiting for permission, he pulled his own phone from his pocket and snapped a screenshot. His thumbs flew across the screen, saving and backing up the evidence before anyone could think to delete it. Rachel's jaw tightened. "Noah, give me that." But he turned away, slipping his phone into his pocket. Not a chance. The air thickened with tension, silence pressing in from every wall. Gloria rose slowly from her chair, spine straight despite the ache in her bones. "Well," she said softly, almost conversational, "now it's all out in the open." Her voice betrayed nothing, not the sting, not the betrayal, not the fury simmering just beneath her skin. Only calm, measured composure. Rachel narrowed her eyes, suddenly less certain of herself. Ethan stood paralyzed, his loyalty torn in two. Gloria picked up her knitting needles from the armrest, her hands steady once more. She met Rachel's gaze, unblinking. Inside, she made a quiet vow. This is where it begins. The night settled heavy after Ethan and Rachel left, the echo of their voices still rattling in Gloria's bones. The house smelled faintly of lavender polish and old books. but beneath it all lingered the acrid scent of insult. Words that clung like smoke no matter how she tried to push them aside. Gloria sat at her dining table, a cup of cold tea forgotten at her elbow. The lamp above threw a warm circle of light across a mountain of papers she had pulled from the cedar chest in her bedroom. Yellowing envelopes, stiff manila folders, and thick binders sprawled like an unspoken history. One by one, she spread them open. Property deeds, with her name typed in bold, clear ink. Tax receipts, the ink faded but dates steady and unbroken, marching year after year without a gap. She ran her hand over them as if they were battle medals. Every bill paid, every form filed, every decision mine. Noah padded in quietly, barefoot. A flashlight still clutched in his hand from checking the locks. He pulled out a chair and sat beside her without a word, eyes roaming over the piles. "You kept all this?" he asked finally, awe softening his tone. Gloria's lips lifted in a faint smile. "Of course, paper doesn't lie. And I've always known one day it might have to speak for me." She slid another folder forward. Letters, some creased, some stained by tears she hadn't admitted to anyone. They were Ethan's, pleas for help when the mortgage fell behind, when the car broke down, when Rachel's boutique job hadn't covered the bills. Gloria had always answered with checks, never questions. A mother's duty, she had told herself. Now, reading them under the lamplight, she saw them differently. Receipts of loyalty, proof of sacrifice. Noah reached across, gently lifting one letter dated 15 years earlier. "Mom, I don't know what we'd do without you." His voice cracked slightly as he read. He looked up at her, eyes burning. He wrote this, and now. Gloria shook her head, stopping him before the bitterness could spiral. "We'll let the paper speak, not anger." Noah nodded, swallowing hard. He pulled his laptop closer, opening the scanner app. "I'll digitize everything. They can't twist a single word this way." The hum of the scanner filled the room, methodical, steady, almost soothing. Gloria stacked the scanned pages neatly, as precise as a nurse setting instruments on a tray. When the last page slid through, Noah leaned back, tapping a few keys. Encrypted, cloud backup, double drive, safe from anyone. Gloria exhaled, the faintest trace of relief softening her shoulders. Then she reached for the phone again, the hateful text still there like an open wound. Slowly, deliberately, she printed it, trimmed the paper edges, and clipped it to the front of the binder. The cruelty became Exhibit A. No longer just pain, but weapon. She ran her fingertips over the thick cover, then closed it with a firm snap. For the first time that night, her hands trembled. Not from weakness, but from the fire settling deep inside her chest. "This," she whispered, more to herself than to Noah, "is my answer." Noah leaned closer, voice low but sure. "Then it's only the beginning." Gloria glanced toward the darkened window, where the faint reflection of her own face stared back. Behind it, Raleigh's night pressed in, full of unspoken battles and quiet storms. Her jaw tightened. Somewhere out there, Rachel believed she could erase a lifetime with one careless message. Gloria laid her palm flat on the binder. She was about to prove her very existence had teeth. By morning, the binder lay on the passenger seat of Gloria's Buick, its thick spine gleaming in the early sunlight. She drove downtown with both hands on the wheel, jaw set tight. Traffic pulsed through Raleigh streets, people hurrying to offices, to coffee shops, to lives that didn't feel like they were under siege. Gloria envied them briefly, then tightened her grip on the wheel. The law office sat in a converted brick house just off Hillsborough Street. The brass plaque by the door read Denise Carter, elder rights attorney. Gloria paused at the threshold, squaring her shoulders before stepping inside. The receptionist looked up. "Mrs. Bennett? Ms. Carter is expecting you." Inside the office, Denise Carter rose from behind a walnut desk. Short hair, sharp suit, eyes like polished steel. She extended her hand with brisk confidence. "Gloria, come in, please." Gloria set the binder on the desk with a heavy thud. Denise arched an eyebrow. That's either trouble or the solution to it. Gloria's lips curved into a thin smile. Both. Denise opened the cover, flipping through property deeds, tax receipts, letters, and finally the printed text, clipped like a scarlet flag at the front. Her eyes lingered on the cruel sentence. This, Denise said, tapping the page, isn't just cruel, it's motive. And motive speaks volumes in court. Gloria folded her hands in her lap, steady despite the ache in her chest. Then I want every word in there to count. I'm not letting them write me out of my own life. Denise leaned back, considering. We'll need to fortify everything you own. A living trust with specific successor trustees. No contest clauses, so if they try to challenge, they lose everything. And we can add a protective covenant that bars harassment, financial or otherwise. Her tone carried the precision of a surgeon explaining a difficult but necessary procedure. Gloria nodded once, firm. I want ironclad dignity. They'll never push me out. Not of my house, not of my life. Denise studied her a moment, then smiled faintly. Good. Most people come to me trembling, terrified. You're different. Gloria thought of hospice nights, where she held the hands of the dying, where families whispered apologies too late. She'd seen fragility, but this was not fragility. This was war. Denise closed the binder gently, fingertips resting on its cover. One warning. If Rachel and Ethan realize they can't touch your assets, their next move may be guardianship. They'll claim you're incompetent, too frail, too forgetful to manage your own affairs. It's ugly, but I've seen it 100 times. Gloria didn't flinch. Then I'll be ready. The air between them hummed with unspoken promise. Denise pulled a legal pad closer, scribbling notes with quick, confident strokes. I'll draft the trust this week. We'll schedule a notary. I'll also reach out to a medical examiner for a baseline competency evaluation, just in case. We'll have it on file before they ever think to attack. Gloria let the words settle, heavy but necessary. She looked at the binder, at the cruel message clipped to its front, and then at the steel-eyed woman across from her. For the first time since the text had landed on her screen, she felt the faintest shift inside. Not relief, not yet, but the sense of ground under her feet. Denise tore the top sheet from her pad, slid it across the desk. Read this over. These are your shields, Gloria. But remember, shields only matter if you're willing to hold them up. Gloria's hand closed over the paper, her knuckles pale against the white. She lifted her eyes, voice low but unwavering. I'm not just holding them, I'm raising them high. Outside, the rumble of traffic carried on, indifferent. But inside that office, the battle line had been drawn, and Rachel Turner had no idea what was coming. 2 evenings later, Gloria heard the crunch of tires over gravel outside her bungalow. Through the lace curtains, she caught sight of Ethan's sedan parked crooked in the drive. Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with grim expectation. She slid her phone onto the end table, camera already open, record button a tap away. The knock came, brisk and insistent. Gloria opened the door to find Rachel standing front and center, manicured smile plastered on her face. Ethan half a step behind like a reluctant shadow. Rachel carried a glossy leather folder in her arms. We thought we'd drop by, she said sweetly, brushing past Gloria before being invited. The scent of her expensive perfume filled the hallway. Ethan mumbled, "Hi, Mom," but his eyes didn't quite meet hers. Gloria shut the door slowly, deliberately, and followed them into the living room. Rachel had already made herself comfortable on the couch, spreading a neat fan of brochures across the coffee table. Each one displayed smiling seniors on manicured lawns. Premier assisted living, safe, comfortable, secure, in bold letters. Rachel's smile tightened. Gloria, you'd be safer there. Places like this are designed to handle, well, everything you shouldn't have to anymore. Gloria lowered herself into her chair opposite them. Her fingers brushed her phone on the table, tapping the red circle until the screen glowed faintly. Recording, her gaze stayed cool, unreadable. "I managed just fine here," she said. Rachel leaned forward, voice honeyed but firm. "You shouldn't have to, though. Ethan and I have been talking. We can handle your bills, your finances, even scheduling your doctor's appointments. You'll have more peace of mind if you let us take over." Ethan shifted uncomfortably beside her, his jaw tightening. He looked as though he wanted to speak, but swallowed the words back down. Gloria let the silence stretch, the only sound the faint tick of the grandfather clock in the corner. She reached for one of the brochures, holding it delicately as if it might soil her fingers. Her eyes lingered on the staged photographs, then lifted to Rachel's polished, expectant face. Her voice came out calm, but each syllable cut with precision. "No, you won't." The firmness in her tone made Ethan's head snap toward her. Rachel blinked, startled for only a second before her mask of confidence slid back into place. "Gloria," Rachel said, lowering her voice as if soothing a child, "we're trying to help you. You can't possibly want to burden Noah with all this someday." Across the room, the faint hum of the phone's recording filled the silence between words. Gloria's lips curved just enough to hint at a smile. "Noah will be just fine. He understands what loyalty looks like." Rachel's jaw tightened. Ethan's hands balled into fists against his knees, but he still said nothing. "Besides," Gloria continued, placing the brochure back on the table with deliberate care, "I have safeguards now, legal safeguards. Every page in that binder speaks louder than your words ever could." Rachel froze, the faintest crack showing in her composure. "What binder?" Gloria didn't answer, just let the question hang in the air like smoke. The clock ticked louder, or maybe it was just the silence pressing heavier between them. Finally, Rachel gathered the brochures back into her folder, snapping it shut with unnecessary force. "Fine," she said, voice sharp. "But you'll regret shutting us out. Don't think you can do this alone." Gloria folded her hands in her lap, steady as stone. "I'm not alone." Her eyes flicked toward the phone glowing faintly on the table, capturing every word. Ethan stood abruptly, muttering, "We should go." His face was pale, his eyes hollow. He moved toward the door, Rachel stalking after him, heels clicking against the hardwood like hammers. When the door closed behind them, Gloria leaned back in her chair. She pressed stop on the recording and saved the file. Her heart pounded, but her lips curved into something close to satisfaction. Because if Rachel thought the binder was dangerous, she hadn't yet considered what proof sounded like. And Gloria now had their voices trapped, forever. The following week, Gloria sat once more across from Denise Carter's desk, the binder between them like a silent witness. The air in the office smelled faintly of leather and coffee, the blinds half closed against the bright Carolina sun. Denise pushed a thick stack of papers across the desk. The legalese was dense, but each page carried the weight of freedom. "This is your fortress," Denise said, her tone measured. "Your home, your savings, your accounts. Everything is now held in a living trust. You are the trustee until the day you choose to step back. Until then, no one, no court, no family member, can touch it without your consent." Gloria's fingers hovered over the papers, "And when I'm gone, Noah," Denise said, glancing toward the teenager perched beside his grandmother, laptop bag slung over his shoulder. "He'll be your successor trustee once he turns 25. Until then, I've named the senior center as backup. Maggie Rowe has agreed to accept that responsibility if it ever comes to it." Gloria's eyes softened. Maggie would keep things honest. Denise nodded. "Exactly. It keeps the power out of Ethan and Rachel's hands entirely." Noah leaned forward, his voice steady though his leg bounced nervously. "Grandma, this means they can't pull any of that nursing home nonsense anymore, right?" Denise's expression sharpened. "Not legally, but people like Rachel, they don't stop at one angle. That's why I added this." She tapped a clause halfway down the page. "It's a no harassment provision. If anyone attempts to coerce, manipulate, or pressure you into giving up control, they lose every inheritance right they might have had. Automatically, Gloria's lips curved into something between a smile and a grimace. So if she pushes me, she's cutting her own throat. Exactly. Denise's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. It's airtight. Gloria picked up the pen. Her hand trembled for a second, not from doubt, but from the enormity of the moment. She steadied herself, pressing the tip firmly onto the page. Her signature unfurled in steady strokes, black ink anchoring her life's work into the fortress Denise had promised. With the final flourish, she set the pen down and exhaled. There, done. Denise gathered the documents neatly, slid them into a fireproof folder, and locked them in her desk safe. Congratulations, Gloria, you're untouchable now. Noah let out a low whistle. Rachel's going to hate this. Gloria's smile sharpened, lines of quiet defiance etching her face. Then it's perfect. For a moment, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. But beneath that quiet was a hum of something electric, dangerous. Gloria could feel it. Rachel would not take this defeat lying down. As Denise handed her a certified copy of the trust, she added, "Expect pushback. People like her don't retreat gracefully. She'll escalate. Guardianship is still their best shot. And if she goes there, it's going to get ugly." Gloria slipped the folder into her tote, her hands steady now. "Then let her try." Denise studied her as if weighing steel in her hands. Then she smiled faintly. "You remind me of the clients who win, the ones who come in with fire already lit. Rachel Turner has no idea what she's up against." Noah looked between the two women, his grandmother with her tote zipped tight, the lawyer with her pen poised like a sword. He felt the weight of it. This wasn't just paperwork. It was armor. Gloria rose from her chair, adjusting the strap of her tote across her shoulder. The late afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, painting sharp bars of light across her face. She looked older than her years in that moment, but also unbreakable. As they walked out of the office, Noah whispered, half in awe, half in defiance, "She's going to lose everything, isn't she?" Gloria didn't look at him. She kept her eyes straight ahead, her steps steady down the hall. "She already has," she murmured. Outside, the courthouse loomed a few blocks away, its stone columns cutting into the skyline. Rachel didn't know it yet, but the battleground was waiting, and Gloria Bennett was already marching toward it. The letter arrived on a gray Thursday morning, tucked among utility bills and grocery flyers. Gloria knew it was different the moment she touched the thick envelope stamped with the county seal. Her stomach tightened as she slid a knife along the edge and pulled out the paperwork. Petition for guardianship. Her name appeared at the top, cold and official, as if she were already diminished to a case file. Her eyes traced the accusations. Frail, forgetful, unable to manage her own affairs. At the bottom, 2 signatures, Rachel Turner and in hesitant ink, Ethan Bennett. Gloria's hands stilled. Ethan, her own son. The ache that pulsed through her chest wasn't shock. It was confirmation of what Denise had warned. But seeing Ethan's name etched beside Rachel's made the betrayal settle like lead in her bones. She picked up her phone and dialed Denise. "They filed," she said, her voice steady, though her throat burned. Denise's answer was sharp, almost eager. "Then we answer. Bring me everything. Today." By afternoon, Gloria was back in the office, binder and folder stacked in her arms. Denise spread the petition across her desk, scanning quickly, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Classic play," Denise muttered. "They're leaning on age stereotypes, hoping the court assumes incompetence. But this..." She tapped the text message still clipped to the binder. "This is gold. It proves motive." Noah sat cross-legged in the corner, laptop open, fingers flying. "I've already pulled Grandma's bank statements and tax returns for the past 5 years. All on time. No overdrafts. Not one late payment." "Perfect," Denise said, nodding. She turned to Gloria. We'll also need medical records. Your primary care physician will sign off on your cognitive health. But I want something stronger. Neuropsychological testing. A baseline evaluation. That way they can't twist a single word. Gloria's mouth curved into something like a smile. Let them test me. I'll ace it. The next day, Harold Denton shuffled up Gloria's porch steps, carrying a stack of notarized papers. The retired county clerk still walked with the careful precision of a man who had spent decades in offices where paperwork ruled lives. I reviewed every tax receipt you gave me, he said, handing the bundle over. Stamped and signed. These should shut down any claim you've been negligent. Gloria squeezed his hand. You've done more than I could ask, Harold. He shrugged, though his eyes softened. Rachel doesn't understand. This neighborhood doesn't eat its own. You're not fighting her alone. At the senior center, Maggie Rowe was equally fierce. She bustled into her office, pulling out calendars and sign-in sheets, waving them like banners of proof. You've taught classes here every week for years, she said, stacking the evidence. Cooking for widowers, grief counseling, even the knitting circle. Frail? Forgetful? Please. You're sharper than half the staff I hire. Gloria chuckled despite herself, but Maggie's tone was iron. I'll testify, and I'll make sure the judge hears just how valuable you are to this community. Back home, Noah spread everything across Gloria's dining table. The binder, Harold's notarized statements, Maggie's testimony, Denise's notes. He organized each piece into a master folder, tabs neat, files scanned and encrypted. This isn't just defense, Grandma, he said, eyes blazing with the same fire she'd once seen in his father as a boy. It's offense. When we walk into that courtroom, we're going in armed. Gloria watched him, pride swelling despite the weight pressing on her chest. She touched the cover of the folder, her hand steady. They think they've written me into weakness, she murmured, but they've just given me a stage. Outside, thunder rumbled low across the horizon, carrying the heavy scent of rain. Gloria looked out the window, the papers stacked high behind her. The storm was coming, and when it broke, she intended to be the one still standing. The county courthouse smelled faintly of floor polish and old paper, the kind of sterile blend that always clung to rooms where lives were decided. Gloria walked slowly but firmly down the aisle, Noah at her side, carrying the thick folder like a shield. Denise led the way in her navy suit, heels clicking with deliberate force. Rachel was already seated at the petitioner's table, her blonde hair pulled tight, her posture sharp as if she owned the air around her. Beside her, Ethan hunched like a shadow, shoulders bowed, eyes fixed on the polished wood grain of the table. He didn't look up when his mother entered. The bailiff's voice rang out. All rise! The judge, a silver-haired man with glasses perched low on his nose, entered with a stack of files in his hand. His gaze swept the room before he motioned for everyone to sit. Rachel rose first, smoothing her skirt as she addressed the court. Her voice dripped with practiced concern. Your Honor, we are here today because Gloria Bennett, my husband's mother, is no longer capable of managing her own affairs. She forgets things, misplaces important documents, and is vulnerable to financial exploitation. We're asking for guardianship to ensure her safety. Her words floated across the courtroom like poison wrapped in sugar. She gestured toward Gloria, her eyes softening in mock pity. It's not easy, but it's what's best for her. Gloria kept her face composed, though her hands tightened in her lap. Across the aisle, Noah glared at Rachel openly. Denise rose, sliding the binder onto the evidence table with a heavy thud. The sound echoed like a gavel strike. Your Honor, she began, crisp and unyielding, what you just heard is a story. This, she tapped the binder, is the truth. She opened it, laying out tax receipts, property deeds, pension records, and finally the printed text Rachel had so carelessly sent. She held it up so the judge could read. This message, Denise said, voice cutting, wasn't an accident. It reveals intent. This isn't about care or safety. It's about power. about erasing a woman's independence to seize control of what she has built. Rachel shifted in her seat, but Denise didn't pause. Every tax return is current, every bill paid, every account balanced. And we have witnesses. She nodded toward Harold, who stood and shuffled to the witness stand. The bailiff swore him in, and Harold placed one hand on the Bible, the other steady on the rail. I reviewed her filings myself, he said, his voice firm despite age. They're flawless, not a mistake, not a misstep. If anything, Mrs. Bennett's paperwork is tidier than half the cases I saw in my clerk days. Denise let the words settle before calling Maggie. The senior center director strode forward, confidence in every step. She sat tall in the witness chair, hands folded neatly in her lap. Gloria isn't just capable, Maggie said. She leads workshops, teaches widowers to cook for themselves, runs grief groups for people half her age. She organizes the knitting circle and balances its accounts to the penny. If that's incompetence, then I'd hate to see what passes for competent these days. A ripple of soft laughter ran through the courtroom, quickly hushed by the bailiff. The judge leaned back, eyes narrowing toward Rachel. Rachel's composure faltered for the first time, her jaw tightening. She darted a look at Ethan, but he refused to meet her gaze. His eyes stayed locked on the table, guilt carving deep shadows across his face. Denise closed the binder with a soft but deliberate snap. Your Honor, this petition is not about Gloria Bennett's well-being. It is about greed thinly veiled as concern. And the evidence makes that plain. The judge adjusted his glasses, studying Rachel for a long moment. The silence stretched until it became heavy, pressing down on every corner of the room. Finally, he spoke, voice measured. I'll need to review everything in detail before making a ruling. But I will say this. So far, I'm not convinced this petition reflects the reality of Mrs. Bennett's situation. Rachel's face flushed crimson, but before she could respond, the gavel came down. Court is in recess until tomorrow morning. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. Gloria rose slowly, feeling the weight of the judge's words settle like a promise. The tide was turning, but storms didn't end after the first crack of thunder. And tomorrow, she knew, Rachel would strike back harder. By nightfall, Rachel had already shifted battlefields. Court was one thing, but family, that was her true stage. She dialed cousins, aunts, even Ethan's distant relatives, her voice dripping with worry. It's heartbreaking, she told them, lowering her tone just enough to sound confidential. Gloria's slipping. She repeats herself, forgets bills, confuses names. We're doing our best, but... She let the silence finish her story. By the end of the night, half the family tree buzzed with whispers. Gloria was losing it. 2 days later, Gloria opened her front door to find 3 relatives standing awkwardly on her porch. Her sister-in-law Carol, her niece Marlene, and cousin Wayne. Their faces carried the same expression. Polite smiles stretched thin over uncertainty. Rachel said, Marlene began, then trailed off. Gloria didn't ask them to explain. Instead, she stepped aside and gestured them in. Coffee's on. Come sit. The kitchen smelled of fresh brewed dark roast and cinnamon muffins. Gloria set the binder squarely on the table before them, its weight an anchor in the room. She poured coffee, slid mugs across, and finally opened the binder with a deliberate hand. Rachel's been busy, she said calmly, so let's busy ourselves with facts. Page after page turned. Property deeds with her name alone, tax receipts stamped and dated year after year, bank statements with balances in order. Harold, who had dropped by at Gloria's request, leaned forward in his seat, voice steady as he pointed to a receipt. This is notarized. Every bill, every tax filing, she handled them. No gaps, no mistakes. Anyone saying otherwise is either misinformed or lying. Carol's lips pressed tight, her eyes shifting from the page to Gloria's face. Rachel made it sound worse. Gloria folded her hands, her voice even. Rachel wants guardianship. Guardianship means control. Control means money. Don't mistake this for care. Wayne shifted uncomfortably, the weight of truth settling over him. I've known you my whole life, Gloria. You're sharper than most people half your age. Marlene glanced at Harold's documents again, her cheeks flushed. If she lied to us about this, Gloria didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply let the binder speak louder than gossip. By the time the coffee mugs sat empty, the doubt in their faces had dissolved into something firmer, anger not at Gloria, but at Rachel. Word spread quickly. What Rachel had seeded as weakness now bloomed into suspicion, against her. At the senior center that weekend, Maggie called a meeting. Dozens of neighbors and community members gathered in the hall, their folding chairs clattering across the tile. Maggie stood at the front, her arms crossed, her tone businesslike but fierce. Rachel Turner thinks she can rewrite who Gloria Bennett is, Maggie said. But we're not letting her erase one of our own. We're drafting a community statement, letters signed, testimonies recorded. We'll make it clear where we stand. Hands shot up. People volunteered to write, to sign, to testify. One man offered to deliver the statement to the courthouse himself. Another promised to speak at the next hearing. Gloria sat quietly in the second row, hands clasped in her lap, heart swelling with something fierce and unexpected. For so long she'd fought quietly, privately. Now the fight belonged to everyone. Denise's office hummed the following Monday as she flipped through the stack of signatures Maggie had delivered. She lifted the statement like it was a banner. This, she said, voice sharp with pride, is what Rachel never counted on. Community, reputation, people who will stand and say you're not what she paints you to be. Noah leaned over her shoulder, scanning the signatures. 42 people. That's not just support. It's an army. Gloria let out a long breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She had walked into this war alone. Now she wasn't alone at all. Denise slid the stack into a legal folder and snapped it shut. I'll file this with the court as supplemental evidence first thing in the morning. Her eyes met Gloria's, and for a moment there was no lawyer, no client, just two women locked in a fight they both intended to win. But Denise's expression hardened as she added, "Be ready. Rachel will see this, and she'll know she's losing ground. People like her don't crumble. They lash out." Gloria felt the truth of it settle deep in her chest. The storm outside the courthouse had followed her home, and Rachel Turner was just getting started the next morning. The courtroom hummed with a tension that clung like humidity before a storm. Gloria sat at the respondent's table, spine straight, hands folded neatly in front of her. Noah slid the evidence folder into place, his eyes sharp and restless. Denise stood tall, the binder and supplemental statements stacked beside her like ammunition. Rachel entered with Ethan trailing behind. Her heels struck the tile like gunfire, her expression smug, as though the whispers she had seeded through the family had already won the war. Ethan's shoulders sagged, his gaze pinned to the floor. "All rise!" The judge settled into his chair, scanning the room over his glasses. "We continue the matter of guardianship over Mrs. Gloria Bennett." His tone was flat, but the weight of it made the silence ripple. "Miss Carter, you may proceed." Denise rose. She opened the binder but didn't begin with the pages already argued. Instead, she slid forward a new exhibit. "Your Honor, yesterday the petitioners claimed Mrs. Bennett was incapable of handling her finances. Today, I bring proof not only of her competence, but of manipulation by the petitioner herself." The judge arched a brow. Rachel's smile faltered. Denise lifted a stack of records. "These are Mrs. Bennett's bank statements for the past decade. Every bill paid on time, every account balanced. In fact, she carries a consistent surplus. Not only is she capable, she is prudent." Rachel shifted in her chair, lips pressing thin. But Denise wasn't finished. She motioned for Noah, who walked to the stand with his laptop tucked under his arm. Sworn in, he set it on the rail and pulled up a spreadsheet. "I've been keeping digital logs of family accounts for years," Noah said, his voice steady but carrying a hint of fire. Dad asked me to help him organize when things got messy. These records show every transfer from my dad's joint account with Rachel. And here, he highlighted several lines, are withdrawals that don't match expenses. They go directly into Rachel Turner's personal account. A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. Ethan's head snapped up, his face stricken. Denise pressed forward. In other words, while Rachel was claiming Gloria was unfit to manage her finances, she herself was siphoning money from her husband's account. Rachel's face flushed crimson. That's a lie, she burst out, slamming a hand on the table. He gave me permission. Permission? Denise cut in, her tone slicing like glass. To funnel funds into a private account without his knowledge. Because that's not what the logs show. The judge lifted a hand, silencing the room. His expression darkened as he scanned the exhibits. I see no evidence here of incompetence on Mrs. Bennett's part. On the contrary, the documents demonstrate careful management. But I do see troubling irregularities with Ms. Turner's conduct. He lifted his gaze, fixing Rachel with a stare sharp enough to cut stone. This court will be considering sanctions for filing a frivolous petition under false pretenses. And I'm lifting the financial freeze immediately. Mrs. Bennett retains full authority over her affairs. Rachel surged to her feet, her voice cracking with fury. She's manipulating all of you. She's turning everyone against me. She jabbed a finger at Gloria. You old witch! The judge's gavel cracked against the bench. Enough, his voice thundered, silencing every breath in the chamber. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. One more outburst, Ms. Turner, and I will hold you in contempt. Do you understand me? Rachel's chest heaved, her hands trembling as Ethan pulled at her sleeve, urging her to sit. Her lips pressed into a hard line, but her glare never left Gloria. Gloria, for her part, remained still. Her hands lay folded in her lap, her face calm as marble. Inside, though, she felt a flicker of something fierce. Vindication, sharp and undeniable. The judge set his notes aside. Court will resume tomorrow to address sanctions and final testimony. Until then, Mrs. Bata. Bennett is free to manage her estate without restriction. The gavel struck again, echoing like thunderclaps across the chamber. As the crowd began to stir, Rachel turned her head slowly, eyes locking with Gloria's. Her expression wasn't defeat, it was venom. Gloria held her gaze, steady as stone. She knew what that look meant. Rachel Turner wasn't finished. And whatever came next would be darker, uglier, more dangerous than anything yet. The article broke on a Sunday morning, splashed across the front page of the Raleigh Ledger. Text mistake exposes daughter-in-law's elder abuse plot. Beneath the headline was a photo of Gloria on her porch. The white wicker chair behind her, the binder resting on her lap. She looked composed, her chin lifted, eyes steady on the camera. The caption beneath read, "She thought one careless message would silence me. Instead, it lit my fire." Inside, the story traced everything: the cruel text, the guardianship petition, the courtroom battle. Denise's sharp quotes cut through like knives. Maggie and Harold appeared on record, their words painting Gloria not as a victim, but as a pillar. She's the one who organizes, who keeps us steady, Maggie told the reporter, her tone fierce. Rachel tried to brand her as fragile, but Gloria Bennett is the sharpest woman I know. Harold's testimony added weight. I worked 30 years at the county clerk's office. Her filings are pristine. The only incompetence I see here is in the falsehoods being spread about her. The story spread faster than gossip ever could. By noon, copies of the paper lay on coffee tables across the neighborhood, and the online version gathered hundreds of comments. Strangers reached out, voices brimming with outrage. How dare her family do this? Good for Gloria, standing strong. Protect our elders. That afternoon, Gloria's front porch became a revolving door. Neighbors arrived with casseroles wrapped in foil, with handwritten notes tucked into envelopes, with flowers pulled fresh from their gardens. One woman she barely knew pressed her hand over Gloria's. You remind me of my mother. She gave up without a fight. You didn't. Thank you. Gloria accepted each gesture with quiet grace. Her kitchen counters soon crowded with food, her mailbox stuffed with letters. But it wasn't just the gifts. It was the weight of solidarity, the chorus of voices echoing what she had always known deep down. She was not alone. Noah documented everything, snapping photos of the letters, logging the names of supporters. It's not just kindness, he said, grinning faintly. It's evidence, proof the community knows the truth. Rachel, meanwhile, felt the fallout immediately. By Monday morning, her employer, an upscale design firm, issued a statement announcing her suspension pending review. The article had been shared too widely, her name tied too tightly to the word abuse. In the staff group chat, messages leaked. Did you see? That's her mother-in-law? Unbelievable. Rachel slammed her laptop shut, seething. They're destroying me, she hissed to Ethan. But Ethan couldn't meet her eyes. The newspaper still lay open on their kitchen table, Gloria's photo staring back at him. Each quote from Maggie, from Harold, from the judge's preliminary remarks was a dagger. His mother had been painted not as weak, but as righteous. And he, the son who had co-signed the petition, was nowhere in the story except by silence. Shame curled in his stomach like acid. At Gloria's bungalow that evening, the house smelled of baked ziti and peach cobbler. Gloria sat at the dining table, surrounded by envelopes, reading one after another in the soft lamplight. Noah typed names into his laptop, cataloging them with military precision. Denise stopped by, tossing her blazer across the back of a chair. She tapped the stack of letters with one hand. Rachel wanted to control the narrative. Instead, she's lost it. The public is against her now. And that matters. Gloria looked up. Matters in court? Denise smiled thinly. Judges don't live in vacuums. They read papers, they hear chatter, and when the tide of opinion swells this strong, it seeps into everything. Outside, cicadas buzzed, their chorus thick in the humid night. Gloria folded another letter, her hands steady. For the first time since this war began, she felt not just vindication, but momentum. Rachel's lies had been exposed, her reputation unraveling thread by thread. But Denise's words from days earlier whispered in her memory, people like her don't crumble, they lash out. Gloria set the letter aside and stared out the darkened window, her reflection faint against the glass. Rachel Turner was cornered now, and a cornered predator was always the most dangerous. It was just past midnight when Noah's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Half asleep, he squinted at the notification, motion detected on the security cameras. He padded barefoot into the living room, pulled up the live feed, and froze. Rachel. Her figure flickered in the grainy glow of the porch light. She wore dark jeans and a fitted jacket. Her hair tied back, her movements quick and nervous. She wasn't knocking, wasn't even hesitating. She was circling the bungalow like a predator sniffing its prey. Noah's throat went dry. He leaned toward Gloria's bedroom door, knocking gently. "Grandma, you need to see this." Moments later, Gloria stood in her robe, eyes narrowing at the screen. Rachel was tugging at the side gate, rattling it hard. Gloria's voice was low, but steady. "Call the police." Noah dialed, explaining in clipped words. Unwanted presence, possible break-in attempt, history of harassment. The dispatcher promised a unit was en route. By the time red and blue lights swept down the street, Rachel had moved to the porch. She bent toward the front door camera, her face filling the lens, eyes wild. "You think you've won?" she hissed, her voice distorted but clear through the speaker. "This isn't over. I'll make sure you regret every second of this." The patrol car screeched to a halt. 2 officers stepped out, hands on their belts. Rachel spun, caught mid-threat, her face paling in the harsh flood of headlights. "Ma'am, step back from the property," one officer barked. Rachel tried for charm, her voice faltering. "Oh, I was just checking in on my mother-in-law. She hasn't been well." "Save it," the other officer cut in. He pointed at the glowing red light of the security camera. "You're on tape." Within minutes, Rachel was cited for trespass and harassment. She sputtered excuses, but the paper was shoved into her hand, the ink as damning as the footage. Ethan arrived half an hour later, summoned by Rachel's frantic call. He stood on the curb, shoulders slumped, watching as she argued uselessly with the officers. He didn't look at Gloria once. Gloria remained on the porch, the camera still blinking red above her. Her robe fluttered in the humid night breeze, her face lit not by fear, but by grim resolve. "This," she murmured to Noah as Rachel finally stormed off, citation in hand, "is the line she shouldn't have crossed." By morning, Denise already had the footage. She watched the time-stamped video 3 times before speaking. "This isn't just harassment," she said, her tone sharp. "It's escalation. I'm filing for a permanent protective order. With this video, the judge won't hesitate." She slid the USB drive into her briefcase. "Rachel just handed us the nail for her own coffin." Harold stopped by later that afternoon, bringing notarized copies of the footage. He tapped the papers with his thick fingers. "Chain of custody's clean. No one can claim tampering. This will hold up." Gloria placed a hand over his. "Thank you." Again. He shook his head. "Rachel doesn't understand. Paper doesn't forget, and cameras don't lie." At the senior center, Maggie convened another emergency gathering. Neighbors filled the hall, outrage humming like electricity. "She came in the dead of night," Maggie said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "She threatened a 72-year-old woman on her own porch. That's not just family drama, it's criminal." A murmur of agreement rippled. Pens scratched paper as Maggie passed around a letter condemning Rachel's behavior. Within minutes, it bore dozens of signatures. Maggie handed the sheet to Gloria, her expression firm. "This goes to the court. This community stands with you. Let them try to say otherwise." Gloria's hand trembled faintly as she accepted it, not from fear, but from the weight of so many voices pressed into one page. That evening, as the sun set in streaks of orange and crimson, Gloria sat on her porch once again. The binder rested on her lap, the signed letter tucked safely inside. The cicadas screamed louder than usual, as if the whole world sensed the crackle in the air. Rachel had lashed out, desperate, reckless. And though the law had caught her once, Gloria knew better than to think it would tame her. She looked toward the darkened street, her voice a whisper carried on the night breeze. "She's not done. Not yet." And for the first time, a flicker of fear pricked at the edges of her resolve, because Predator's Corner didn't just lash out. Sometimes they bit. The courthouse buzzed like a hive that morning, the air thick with whispers. Reporters lingered by the doors, their cameras trained on the double oak entrance. The fallout from Rachel's midnight trespass had traveled fast, and now the whole city seemed to be watching. Gloria stepped inside with Noah at her side. She wore a navy dress, simple but strong, the same color as Denise's suit. The binder rested in Denise's arms, the weight of months of preparation condensed into one thick spine. Rachel was already seated at the petitioner's table, her face pale but defiant. Ethan sat stiffly beside her, hands folded so tightly his knuckles blanched. He looked like a man trying to vanish into the wood. "All rise." The judge entered, his gavel cracking once. "This court reconvenes to finalize the matter of guardianship over Mrs. Gloria Bennett." His tone was sharp, as if cutting straight to the marrow. Denise rose first. She placed a fresh exhibit before the judge. "Your Honor, we begin with the competency evaluation conducted last week by Dr. Heller, a board-certified neuropsychologist. The results speak clearly." She handed the sealed report forward. The judge adjusted his glasses, scanning the findings aloud. Cognitive performance, above average. Memory, intact. Independent living capacity, fully competent. Rachel's face drained of color. Denise's voice carried across the room. Measured and precise. The petitioners claim Mrs. Bennett is incapable. This evaluation alone eviscerates that claim. But there is more. She turned to Harold, who once again took the stand. His voice was steady, his presence dignified. I've notarized every receipt, every filing Mrs. Bennet has made over the past decade. She runs her household with greater precision than half the clerks I trained in my career. The accusation that she cannot handle her finances is not only false, it's insulting. Rachel shifted, whispering sharply in Ethan's ear. He stared straight ahead, unmoving. Next came Maggie. She walked to the stand with the confidence of someone who had the weight of a community behind her. Gloria is not frail. She teaches, she organizes, she leads. She's a lifeline at the senior center. If she disappeared tomorrow, we'd need 3 people to replace her. This idea that she's fading is a story Rachel invented. And I, for one, am tired of hearing it. Her words landed like hammer blows. A ripple of quiet agreement ran through the gallery, neighbors nodding in their seats. Finally, Noah approached the stand. He carried his laptop and a thick binder of printouts, his hands steady despite his youth. These are digital logs I've kept for years, he explained, his voice clear. They show a pattern, Rachel belittling my grandmother in texts, siphoning funds from my dad's account, and now even trespassing at night to harass her. The footage from last week, with timestamps, is included here. The judge's face hardened as he flipped through the evidence. Each page seemed to nail another board into the coffin of Rachel's case. Denise stood once more. Your Honor, in light of this overwhelming evidence, we ask not only for dismissal, but dismissal with prejudice, so this harassment cannot be dragged into court again. Furthermore, we seek sanctions against the petitioner for abuse of process, and request that fees incurred by Mrs. Bennet be reimbursed. The courtroom fell into silence so thick it felt like a held breath. The judge leaned back, steepling his fingers. Mrs. Bennet has demonstrated competency beyond dispute. The petition for guardianship is dismissed, with prejudice. Furthermore, the court imposes sanctions on Miss Turner for filing under false pretenses. Mrs. Bennet is awarded costs and attorney fees. The gavel cracked down. Rachel shot to her feet, her face mottled red, eyes blazing. This is corruption. She's playing all of you. Enough, the judge thundered. Sit down or I'll hold you in contempt. Ethan tugged at her sleeve, whispering urgently, but Rachel yanked her arm free and stormed toward the doors. Cameras flashed as she shoved past reporters, her fury spilling into the hallway. In the sudden quiet, Gloria inhaled deeply. She hadn't realized until that moment how long she'd been holding her breath. Her shoulders relaxed, but her eyes stayed fixed on the empty doorway where Rachel had disappeared. Because she knew the fight wasn't just about paperwork or petitions anymore. Rachel's rage had slipped beyond the bounds of law, and what lived outside those bounds could still be deadly. A week later, Denise slid the final document across her desk, the embossed pages crisp under the office light. The air smelled faintly of ink and polish, but to Gloria it carried the scent of liberation. This is it, Denise said, her voice edged with satisfaction. The trust is now irrevocable. Your assets, your home, your savings, untouchable. Rachel has no path back. Not through guardianship, not through contesting, not through coercion. Gloria adjusted her glasses, her fingers hovering before she set pen to paper. She thought of the long months of battle, the text, the binder, the courtroom. Then she signed with a slow, deliberate hand, her name unfurling across the page like a final seal. Denise gathered the signed documents and locked them in her safe. And with the protective order in place, Rachel is legally barred from contacting you in any way. She comes near, she faces arrest. Noah exhaled, a grin spreading across his face. So, she's done. For real this time. Gloria leaned back, the tension that had lived in her shoulders for so long just beginning to ease. My house is safe. My life is mine again. 2 days later, the senior center hummed with the warmth of celebration. Maggie had insisted on a luncheon in Gloria's honor, and the hall was filled with the clatter of dishes, the smell of fried chicken and sweet tea, and the low buzz of voices. At the front, a banner stretched across the wall, in appreciation of Gloria Bennett. Gloria sat at the head table, cheeks flushed as neighbors pressed plates into her hands, thanking her, hugging her, shaking her hand. She felt like a reluctant hero, but the pride in their eyes was undeniable. Maggie tapped a spoon against her glass, drawing silence. "This woman," she said, gesturing toward Gloria, "showed all of us what standing your ground looks like. She didn't just protect her home, she set an example. When they try to erase us, when they try to push us aside, we fight back. And we win." The room erupted in applause. Gloria felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them away, lifting her glass instead. She wasn't one for speeches, but her voice carried strong. "I couldn't have done this without all of you. You gave me strength when I thought I had none left." "This isn't just my win. It's ours." Maggie reached across, squeezing her hand. "You've given every person in this room hope that we're not as invisible as they think." Later that week, Harold arrived at Gloria's bungalow with a folder tucked under his arm. He placed it gently on the dining table, where so much of the battle had been fought. "Certified, stamped, and filed," he said. "These copies are now part of the county record. No loopholes, no back doors." Gloria opened the folder, her eyes tracing the notarized seals. For the first time in months, she felt the air move through her lungs without weight. "You've given me back my breath." "Harold," he smiled, his weathered face softening. "No, Gloria, you gave it back to yourself." That evening, Gloria stepped onto her porch as the sun dipped low, the cicadas buzzing in the humid twilight. She held a glass of iced tea, condensation slick against her palm, and looked out at the garden she had tended for decades. The house behind her stood steady, its windows glowing golden in the fading light. She whispered into the quiet. "Now I breathe freely." Noah joined her, slipping an arm around her shoulders. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Together, they watched the night settle, a peace neither had believed would come. And yet, as Gloria turned her gaze down the quiet street, her relief was tinged with something sharper. The law had silenced Rachel, boxed her in, but Rachel's face in that courtroom, red with rage, eyes burning with venom, wasn't one that surrendered. Victory was hers, for now. But peace, Gloria knew, was always temporary when someone like Rachel was still out there, plotting in the dark. The soil was cool beneath Gloria's gloves, crumbling between her fingers as she pressed the roots of a marigold into place. The late summer sun warmed her shoulders, and the rhythmic scrape of the trowel soothed her like a hymn. A glass of iced tea waited on the porch rail, beads of condensation catching the light. Peace had a sound, she realized. Not silence, but the low buzz of cicadas, the creak of her wind chime, the faint rustle of Noah's voice drifting from the porch where he sat with a stack of envelopes. "Grandma," he called, waving a handful of cards, more thank you notes from the senior center. They're using the new fund to start an art program. Classes for painting, pottery, stuff they never had the budget for before. Gloria brushed dirt from her gloves and joined him, sinking into the porch chair beside his pile. He read aloud from one letter, the handwriting looping and uneven. "Thank you, Gloria. Because of your fight, our center has new life. You gave us dignity by keeping your own." Her throat tightened. She pressed her palm against the page, feeling the indent of ink like the echo of a voice. "You see," Noah said, smiling. "This fight wasn't just about you. It changed things for everyone." Before Gloria could reply, a familiar knock echoed from the front gate. Harold ambled up the path, waving a manila folder like a flag. "Don't worry, I'm not here with subpoenas," he chuckled. "Just figured you'd want a final peek at your fortress." County clerk stamped every copy. "If Rachel so much as breathes on your file, she'll get paper cuts." Gloria laughed, a sound lighter than she'd felt in months. "You've become my paper detective, Harold." "Best title I've had in years," he said with a grin, setting the folder on the porch table. "But it's official. You're bulletproof." That evening, Maggie arrived with her usual whirlwind of energy, arms full of binders and a thermos of sweet tea. "We're rolling out the new grief program," she announced, dropping into a chair. "And the kitchen upgrade's funded. Gloria, your donation didn't just help, it multiplied. People saw what you stood for, and they wanted to stand with you." Gloria listened, her heart swelling as Maggie described seniors learning to bake bread, widowers painting landscapes, volunteers lining up to teach. It was proof that her fight had planted seeds far beyond her own fence line. But the peace of the moment shifted when headlights swept across the driveway. A sedan rolled to a stop, and Ethan stepped out, shoulders hunched as though he carried a visible weight. Gloria's hand stilled on her glass. Noah rose from his chair, bristling, but Gloria touched his arm lightly. "Let him come." Ethan walked the path slowly, stopping at the foot of the porch steps. His eyes were bloodshot, his suit rumpled, his voice raw. "Mom," he began, struggling for breath. "I was wrong. I was weak. I let Rachel turn me against you. And I'll regret it every day." Gloria studied him in silence, the cicadas filling the space between them. For a long time, she let him stand there, heavy with shame. Finally, she said, "You can visit, but only you. She never crosses this porch again." Relief flickered across his face, mingled with grief. "I understand." He stepped back, leaving the night heavy with unfinished apologies. Gloria returned to her chair, lifting her iced tea once more. The marigolds stood bright in the fading light, the house behind her steady, and hers. She had built peace on her terms, and yet, deep in her chest, she knew peace was always fragile, especially when Rachel Turner still breathed somewhere beyond the darkened street. The envelope sat on Gloria's kitchen counter like a viper coiled in cream stationery. Her name was written across the front in Rachel's elegant practice script. No return address, no explanation. Just one more attempt to sink her claws where they no longer belonged. Gloria stared at it for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she slid the shredder from beneath the counter, fed the envelope in whole, and listened as the blades chewed it into strips. Not even curiosity deserved to survive. When the last ribbon disappeared, she dusted her hands clean. "That's done," she murmured. On the dining table, 2 frames leaned side by side, waiting. In one, she placed the Raleigh Ledger article, the bold headline beneath her steady-eyed portrait. "Text mistake exposes daughter-in-law's elder abuse plot." In the other, she pressed a handwritten note from the Senior Center's scholarship fund. "Thank you, Mrs. Bennett. Because of you, I can attend nursing school. I'll carry your strength with me always." The 2 frames together told the story better than she ever could. Not just survival, but transformation. From being targeted to becoming the reason others stood taller. Noah entered from the porch, wiping his shoes on the mat. He stopped when he saw the framed pair on the table. His grin spread slowly, pride and relief mingling in his eyes. "She lost, Grandma. Completely." Gloria touched the frames, her fingertips lingering on the cool glass. She shook her head gently. "No, Noah. I won." He tilted his head, watching her closely, but said nothing. There was no need. The words had weight enough to fill the room. Later that evening, she moved through the bungalow, straightening the Afghan on the couch, turning down the lamp, the small rituals of closing a house for the night. Each step was unhurried, grounded. The bungalow was quiet again, her quiet. No voices pressing, no papers demanding defense, no shadows waiting to ambush her dignity. Through the kitchen window, she could see her marigolds glowing faintly in the moonlight, their bright heads unbowed. The house itself seemed to breathe easier. Its old bones relaxed now that the storm had passed. She sank into her favorite chair, the one by the window, and let her body rest against the cushions. For the first time in months, she let out a long, unguarded exhale. It wasn't just relief. It was reclamation, peace, not fragile this time, but earned. As Noah moved around the kitchen, stacking dishes, Gloria closed her eyes briefly, and let the quiet hum around her. There was no venom in her house anymore, no schemes scribbled into petitions. The air was hers, the space was hers, the life was hers. The lesson wasn't in the binder she had built, or the court she had faced, or even the headlines that carried her story across town. The lesson was in the silence that followed, the silence she had fought to keep. She had proven something Rachel would never understand. Strength wasn't loud, it was steady. Gloria rose once more, checking the locks on the doors before heading to bed. She paused at the frames on the table, brushing her fingers lightly across them. The article, the thank you note. 2 testaments, one of what she had endured, the other of what she had given. She smiled faintly, turned off the light, and let the bungalow settle into its familiar hush. In that hush, the final thought came, sharp and clear, echoing back to where it had all begun. My daughter-in-law accidentally sent me a message meant for her mother saying, "This useless old woman must be sent to a nursing home," so I made sure she was the one sent packing. The words settled into the dark, not bitter, not triumphant, simply true. And with that, Gloria Bennett finally slept, safe in the home that would always be hers.